Okay, good evening, everyone. Sorry about the delay. This evening, in our focus activity, we're going to look at goals using future perfect and future perfect continuous. Okay, so setting goals. Why do we set goals? Does anyone want to answer why we set our goals? And what do you hope to have accomplished by this time next year? Do you have any goals, any dreams, any ambitions, anything that you'd like to do? Okay. For example, um, by this time next year, I hope to have bought a new car, for example. By this time next year, I hope to have bought a new car. Or by this time next year, I hope to have learned the violin. So by this time next year, I hope to have bought a new car. And I hope to have learned to play the violin. Okay. What habits do you hope to have changed or created by next year? So for this question, we could talk about habits that you would are bad and you'd like to change, or a good habit that you'd like to take up. Okay. So again, by this time next year, you could say, I hope to have changed the habit of biting my nails, for example. Okay. By this time next year, I hope to have changed the habit of biting my nails. Okay. Or I hope to have created the habit of getting up early, for example. By this time next year, I hope to have created the habit of getting up early. Okay, so creating a habit or changing a habit that you already have. I hope to have changed the habit of biting my nails. And by the end of the day, by the end of the day, I hope to have achieved I don't know. I hope to have achieved that I hope to have read 20 pages of my book. Okay. So let's just look at these questions again. So by this time next year, I hope to have bought a new car. Um, by this time next year, I hope to have learned to play the violin. Mhm. What habits do you hope to have changed or created by next year? Um, by this time next year, I hope to have changed the habit of biting my nails. Okay. And by this time next year, I hope to have created the habit of getting up early. Okay. And by the end of this day, which is very soon, by the end of the day, I hope to have read 20 pages of my book. Okay. Let's move on. So, a 5-year plan. Um, what goals have you reached over the last year or over the past 5 years? Have you achieved anything amazing or even little achievements? You can tell me about any little achievements that you've made, or if you have an amazing achievement you'd like to share, please share it in the chat box. Okay. Over the last 5 years, tell me about some of your achievements. Mhm. Um, for example, goals have you? So what goals have you reached over the last year or over the last 5 years? Okay. What goals have you reached over the last year or over the last 5 years? So, over the last year, I learned some Italian. A very small goal. Okay. Over the last year, oh, I've learned some Italian. Okay. And over the last 5 years, I've learned to play um, musical instrument. Okay. Over the last 5 years, I've learned to play a musical instrument. Let's look at number 2. What would you like to accomplish within the next year, the next 2 years, or the next 5 years? So, what would you like? I'd like to be able to, for example, speak another language. Mhm. Over the next 5 years. Mhm. So, over the next 5 years, I'd like to be able to speak another language. Okay. That's a goal that takes a long time because learning a language doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen in a year. You need a lot of time to learn a language correctly. Okay. What would you like to accomplish within the next year? For example, within the next year, I'd like to be able to play the piano, for example. Even though I don't play the piano, and I probably never will play the piano, um, the next year I'd like to be able to play the piano. Okay. Number 3, what steps do you need to start working toward your goal? Okay. So if you have a very big goal, the best way to achieve it is to break it down into little steps and achieve each little step as a little task. And then all the little tasks, when you add them up, it equals your goal. Okay, so if you have a massive goal or something that you'd like to achieve that takes a lot of time, break it up into little tasks, do the little tasks, and over time, you'll definitely achieve your goal. So, what steps do you need to start working towards your goal? For example, I need to study. Mhm. I need to be very focused. Mhm. So, to achieve your goals, you need to be very focused. Mhm. To achieve my goals, I need to have a solid plan. Very important. If you plan your goals out, there's a better chance that you'll get them. So to achieve my goals, I need to have a solid plan. Okay. And number 4, what will you have done to reach your goal by the end of next week, next month? So by end of next week, so if I want to achieve my goal of being able to play the piano, I would say by the end of next week, I will have looked for classes I will have created a plan. Mhm. And I will have created a positive mental attitude. Okay. So by the end of next week, I will have looked for classes. I will have a positive mental or hey Valeria, how are you? Finally, a person. Valeria, tell me where you're from. And do you have any goals or objectives that you'd like to reach over or within the next year or the next 2 years or the next 5 years? So, whenever you can, Valeria, tell me about your goals. Tell me a little bit. Okay. So, good answer, Valeria. Valeria says, I need to be really interested in what I want to achieve and not let me distract from the accidents on my way. That's very true. You need to be very focused, Valeria. Fantastic. And yeah, good in quarantine. I'm glad to hear that, Valeria. Um, that's good to hear. So, Valeria, do you have a goal? Do you have something you'd like to achieve? From Salerno. Fantastic. Wonderful. And I'm from Ireland, but I'm living in Napoli. So we're almost neighbors. Okay, Valeria, tell me about a goal, if you can. Mm, okay, we can move on. So, best laid plans. So, do you prefer to always have a game plan or do you fly by the seat of your pants? Fly by the seat of your pants. Do you know what that means? To fly by the seat of your pants. Any idea? Hmm? Yeah, Napoli is a great place. Definitely, Valeria. So, do you know what fly by the seat of your pants? What does that mean? To fly by the seat of your pants. It's an expression in English. Mhm. So, to fly by the seat of your pants is to, it means to have not made proper plans. Okay? So if you're going to, for example, you're doing a project or something and you don't plan the project, you're just making decisions as you go along. You haven't really thought about what you're doing. Um, that means to fly by the seat of your pants. Yeah, it could also mean that, Valeria. It means to do things in the way they come. So you just take the things as they arrive without a plan. Okay, I guess sometimes it can be very enjoyable, but sometimes maybe it can end up in disaster also. Okay, but yeah, I think you understand, Valeria. Okay, so let's look at these verbs: to plan out, to plan for, to plan on, to plan ahead. Okay, so to plan out, to plan out. What do you think to plan out means? to plan out. Um, is it to prepare for something? Is it to formulate a detailed scheme? Is it to make arrangements in advance? Or is it to be ready for something? Mhm. Let's see, to plan out means to formulate a detailed scheme. Okay? So, for example, John planned out everything for his project. Okay? Plan out. To plan out means to formulate a detailed scheme. And an example would be John planned out everything for his project. Okay? So he made a detailed scheme for his project. Let's look at the next verb, to plan for. Plan for. Okay? To plan for. So does to plan for mean to prepare for something, to make arrangements in advance, or to be ready for something? Would anyone like to answer to plan for, or does anyone have an idea what it could be? To plan for, to be ready for something. Let's check. Fantastic. Well done, Valeria. To plan for is to be ready for something. For example, William planned for his university. And for university course by saving up a lot of money. Okay, so to plan for means to prepare for something. And an example of this is William planned for his university course by saving up a lot of money. Okay? Or in other words, William prepared for his university course by saving up a lot of money. Let's look at the next one. Plan on. To plan on. Sorry. Plan on. To plan on, does it mean to make arrangements in advance or to be ready for something? Does anyone have any idea on what it could mean? To plan on, or is it to make arrangements in advance, or is it to be ready for something? To plan on. What could it be? To plan on. So to plan on means to be ready for something. Okay. Mary planned on being early for her work on Monday. Okay, to plan on. So Mary planned on being early for her work on Monday. Okay, so Mary was ready to be early for her work on Monday. So to plan on is to be ready for something. And then to plan ahead this one is very difficult, is to make arrangements in advance. Okay. Yeah, to be ready for something. Very good. Okay, Valeria, would you like to try the last one, to plan ahead? Could you give me an example with to plan ahead? So to plan ahead, means to make arrangements in advance. To make arrangements in advance. Peter planned ahead for his party by buying a lot of snacks. For example, they plan ahead to make arrangements in advance. So Peter planned ahead for his party by buying a lot of snacks. Or you could say, Peter made arrangements in advance for his party by buying a lot of snacks. Hmm. Very good. Let's move on. So now we have a little bit of grammar. Okay, looking forward, looking back. Very good answer, Valeria. Before to go to Napoli, I planned ahead where to eat the best sfogliatella. Fantastic, very good. And Valeria, where in Napoli is the best sfogliatella? Where? Where is the best sfogliatella? So, looking back, looking forward. By the time, plus simple present, plus the subject, plus will, plus have, plus been, plus verb and ing. Okay? This is when we're talking about predictions into the future. So by the time I get home, I will have eaten I will have been walking for 40 minutes. Okay. So by the time I get home, I will have been walking for 40 minutes. Mhm. By the time I finish working, by the time I finish working, I will have been working for 10 hours. Long day. Okay. By the time I finish working, I will have been working for 10 hours. Okay. And then by this time next year, I will have been living in Italy for 2 years. Okay, Valeria, I will remember that for when I can escape from the quarantine in Galleria Umberto Primo. Okay. near Teatro San Carlo. Thank you for that, Valeria. Cool. So, by this time next year, I will have been living in Italy for 2 years. Okay. By the time I finish, by the time I finish speaking, I will have been speaking for 40 minutes, for example. By the time I graduate, I will have been studying for 7 years, for example. Um, by the time I retire, I will have been working for, who knows, 60 years. By the time I get home, I will have been walking for 40 minutes. By the time I get married, I will have been in a relationship for 10 years, for example. Um, by the time I get a promotion, I will have been working for 20 years. Okay. Mhm. So let's look at this last slide. Time waits for no one. By the end of this lesson, how long will you have been studying English? So if you'd like to write some answers, you can. Tell me by the end of this lesson how long you will have been studying English. By the end of this year, how long will you have been living in your current home? And by the end of this month, how long will you have been working at your current job? Okay, so by the end of this lesson, how long will you have been studying English? I will have been studying English for, very good answer, Valeria. By the time I get married, I will have been dead. Okay. Marriage is not for everyone, I guess. Or Valeria, by the end of this lesson, how long will you have been studying English for? By the end of the lesson. Or how long have you been studying English, Valeria? Mhm. By the end of this year, how long would you have been living in your current home? So, for example, by the end of this year, I will have been living in my current home for 1 year, more or less, 1 year. Mhm. And by the end of this month, how long will you have been working at your current job? By the end of this month, I will be working at my current job for 8 months, for example. So, by the end of the lesson, how long will you have been studying English? By the end of this year, how long will you have been living in your current home? And by the end of the month, how long will you have been working at your current job? So, by the end of this year, I will have been living in my current home for 1 year. By the end of this year, I will be living in my current home for 1 year. And the last one, by the end of this month, I will have been working in my current job for 8 months. Very good. So by the end of this year, I've been living in my current home for 10 years. Okay, cool, Valeria. You've been living in Salerno for a long time. Mhm. Or do you live in Salerno or are you from Salerno? Interesting. Good. By the end of this month, I will have been working in my current job for 8 months. Okay, a couple of minutes for some answers, and then we'll finish. So if you'd like to write an answer to any of the questions, please write a quick answer now. Okay, very good. By the end of this month, I will be working at my current job for almost 11 years. Wow, that's a long time, Valeria. Too much. 11 years is very long. Mhm. Okay, so thank you, Valeria, for your participation. Thank you very much. Um, and now it's time to go. Okay, so everyone stay safe and have a lovely evening. Bye now.